was always competitive, to be honest, but I was very lucky because I was competitive. I was the worst of the competitive group in my age group, and there were eight girls from Alberta at that time, and six out of the eight either went on to compete at the Olympic level or World Championship level, represent Team Canada internationally, or medal at the Olympics. And so, I mean, that was a gift in and of itself, because being the worst out of kind of that group of girls, they pushed me, but they also pulled me along. Kind of that cliche of like you become you become like the people that you spend the most time around. I was very lucky that they continued to beat me. And from an early age, it really like showed me or taught me that there's a fundamental difference between being beat and losing.
That was a clip from today's guest. Today is an interesting episode. It is like a real meeting point between two different parts of my life. It is someone who knows my family in a real interesting way, and we'll save that. And also someone who has just this incredible story of taking risks, perseverance, like really impressive career in one arena that they were able to parlay into another. Just a really cool story, and also has to do with my hometown. So all of it kind of it lights up all the boxes for me. I'm really stoked. And before we get to it, please rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. My name is Aram Anastasia, and this is One Step Beyond. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Aram. I'm so grateful to be here. This is going to be a blast.
Heck yeah. All right. So for the uninitiated, for those who don't know, who are you and what do you do?
My name is Anastasia Bucsis. I am a two-time long track speed skater that competed in Vancouver 2010 and Sochi 2014. And now I am a sports host with CBC. So I get to host the Olympic Games, and I'm happy as a clam always.
That is awesome. All right, let's start with just kind of our mutual connection point. You grew up in Calgary, and my mom was your teacher. Is that right?
Yeah, that's how we've met. Like I truly slid into, I think, your DM being like, is your mother Ursula Arslanian? Because she was the best teacher I've ever had. And truly, I mean, she taught me grade 7 through grade 9 at St. Augustine's School in Calgary. And
Mhm.
she just made everyone feel so special and empowered. And like, it was so unique, and it was such a awkward time of life. I mean, I don't know if anyone peaks in grade 7, but your mom made me feel like I could accomplish anything in my life. And I'll never forget that. You forget what people say or what they do, but you'll never forget how they made you feel. And yeah, I'm a big fan of your mom's, so thanks for having me on the pod.
Well, no, thank you. Um, so being someone who grew up in sport, you I would believe understand the value of mentorship, coaching, having a strong teacher in your life, all of those. So reflecting back on that, what did you get out of being involved in things where you had strong figures that you could like really rely on for guidance?
Well, I was very lucky, because when I was speed skating, I started when I was 4 years old. I remember watching the 1994 Lillehammer Olympics and going, "That's what I want to do." I grew up at a time with some just amazing female role models: Susan Ock, Katrina Lemaydone, Clara Hughes, Cindy Clausen, Christina Groves. All of these individuals, aside from Susan and Katrina, they're a little bit older than I am. They became teammates and friends. And to have just such independent, kick-ass, like grounded, strong, confident role models that I could see and touch and smell and be so close to their success, it's been the greatest gift. I mean, it's been a gift that's kept on giving. And I think sometimes people think of sport and they go, okay, team sport versus individual sport. And speed skating has given me the gift also of being an individual sport that's so difficult that you need to learn how to train and work with a team around you. So you kind of get the best of both worlds a little bit. And it's really made me the person that I am today. I mean, wins, losses, of course you lose, or you learn so much more from the losses, but it gave me a really lovely foundation to, yeah, meet every challenge head on now in my second career. So I'm so grateful for speed skating.
So in your second career, have you found like coaches or mentors, people that have guided you along the path?
I have. And yeah, I was just talking to my wife about it because I was like, who do I gravitate towards? And it's been very similar throughout my entire life, I would say. I mean, there's different times and different people that come into it to teach you a lesson or to help you. But I really gravitate towards leaders that don't need to kind of show you that they're the leader. I really appreciate that kind of quiet, calm confidence. And anyone that really meets me where I'm at too, and like has a really humanistic kind of lens on problems, I gravitate towards that energy really, really quickly because yeah, in sport, I think it's so fleeting. Success can be so up and down, and to me that's really shown me that you have to define success on your own terms as well, because sometimes
Mhm.
you're the fastest skater and then some days you are 12th and no one wants to say your name, right? So yeah, really gravitating towards people that I think also can define success without the outcomes quite yet. That's
Okay.
those are the people that have helped me the most.
So what about in your life? How have you been a coach or a mentor for other people, and like what approach do you take to it?
Great question. I You know what, like I think so many people, I can advocate for anyone. I cannot advocate for myself. That is definitely I still struggle with that one. Um but I always I always believe, and I always have believed, that making people feel, seen and appreciated, very much like your mom, like how I said, she made me feel special. Like that's someone that truly, has shown me that lesson, is the power of making someone feel special and that they can do something, or that we all have that thing inside of us that makes us great. I try and lean into positive. Like I try and be overly positive, not toxic positivity, but I guess just a privilege too of growing up in elite sport. Like, yeah, I've been surrounded by people, the great majority of my life, that have shown up and have had clear, concise goals, and
Mhm.
I know that they're trying their best. Like I do believe that people try their best mostly when they're showing up. So does that give you like a lovely, concise answer as to what kind of leader I am? Probably not. But those are some of the guiding kind of North Stars that I've tried to center myself around.
Heck yeah. All right, let's go back to speed skating in the start. So before speed skating, before you like saw it on TV, did your family already have a background in sports? So were there athletes already in your family?
Yeah, I think my parents weren't born with two left feet, but my dad liked playing football. He wanted to play in college. But the tie with speed skating was super random. I think truly just growing up in Calgary, they knew that we had the best facilities in the world. I was born in '89 and we hosted '88, of course. But when I watched Lillehammer, it was actually figure skating that inspired the dream. Like Oksana Bayul, she swoops in. It's Nancy Kerrigan, Tanya Harding battling it out like this, larger than life narrative. And it was Oksana Bayul's gold medal. I don't know why. I don't know why. In my 4-year-old brain, that was just what I wanted to do. And my parents kind of were like, "Okay, sweetie, like, but you'll learn to skate on speed skates." And I didn't push back. And I was lucky. I never quit. And yeah, about 15 years later, I found myself on the starting line of the Olympic Games in Vancouver.
So when did it go from like, oh yeah, like this is just like my activity, my kid's activity, to being like, oh no, this is like a thing?
I was always competitive, to be honest, but I was
Mhm.
very lucky because I was competitive. I was the worst of the competitive group in my age group. And there were 8 girls from Alberta at that time, and 6 out of the 8 either went on to compete at the Olympic level or World Championship level, represent Team Canada internationally, or medal at the Olympics. And So I mean, that was a gift in and of itself, because being the worst out of kind of that group of girls, they pushed me, but they also pulled me along.
Mm.
Kind of that cliche of like, you become like the people that you spend the most time around. I was very lucky that they continued to beat me, and from an early age, it really like showed me or taught me that there's a fundamental difference between being beat and losing, because
Mm.
I would lose to all those, the other seven girls. I'd be 8 out of 8, but I would be eighth in North America, perhaps. I'm making up these numbers just a tad, so
Mm.
please bear with me. Um, but I was always in a competitive field. It just forced me to really be honest and provide significant feedback to myself. Like, what am I doing when I'm skating well? What am I doing when I'm happy on and off the ice? Like, it was just a real feedback of what's in my control. How can I execute what's in my control or identify what's in my control? And then when that gun goes off, okay, I might be 8th out of 8th, but then I might be 6th out of 8th. And then I might be 5th out of 8th, but I'm right there. And then I have a little bit of a medal shot, XYZ. It was real incremental lessons. Um, and it just, yeah. I can't believe it's over sometimes. I'm like, I've been retired for 7 years and here I am still talking about speed skating outdoors in Red Deer, Alberta. But it
Yeah,
truly has like laid the foundation of my life. Yeah.
totally. 100%. I grew up playing in bands ever since this little kid. Like my mom was very cool that she allowed me and my friends to play terrible music in their basement for hours on end. And like I that was all I did, like really focus on it. Well, I went to school and did all that. But I played as much as you can in the kind of music that I play, and I played like a professional level, and that's in like the taillights for me. Like I still kind of do it recreationally,
Yeah.
but it is like how I do what I do now, and it's like I parlayed that into something else, and it's like this foundational thing that
What are your thoughts on the TikTok music scene? That's like the conversation I'm so interested in. It's changing the
uh,
game.
I barely even know what TikTok is. Like Monica has a TikTok, and we use one for the podcast, but like I don't even have an Instagram. I have an Instagram, but I don't run it. It's just like only for the podcast. So like I got no comment. All right, I
No.
want to ask you a question though that I'm real interested in.
Mhm.
Competition. So you said I was a competitive person. Were you a naturally competitive person, or is it like a learned thing, or is it maybe a bit of A and B?
I think I was a naturally competitive person. And I only say that because now that I'm 35 and I'm surrounded by, kids that are perhaps getting into the sport, and I see how they interact with the sport, like I was an intense little kid. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh my." I definitely liked racing, and I've always been a racer. Since I was 4 or 5 years old to, when I retired at 27. Didn't love training that much, to be honest. I could get through it. Don't get me wrong. I always tried hard. I worked very, very hard. But there was like a sixth little gear on race day. And even now, when I am, in the field or the mix zone for CBC Sports or at the Olympics, I still feel it very viscerally. And I am not. I trust me. I've got lots of frailties, and I'm not perfect, but I can almost see like when someone is going to have a good one versus not, just by body language, by how they're holding themselves, by the energy. I'm quite an empath, and it's nice. It's like a little blast from the past, because I'm like, oh no, I am a racer. It is ingrained. I do think though, to your question about A or B, I think it would be a little bit more lovely if perhaps I was more in the middle of that too, because
Mm-hmm.
I always had something a little extra when I needed it, which is a really lovely thing to have. But I wish I could have had more consistency in the training races, or the races that didn't matter as much, because consistency then can help you get to those extra levels. And sometimes I would struggle almost to like get up to perform if it doesn't matter as much.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So specific to about being competitive, we live in an interesting time where like you speak to one person about being competitive, they'll speak about it in a very like, oh, what a great thing. It's such a gift to be competitive. It was the thing that gave me the edge. And you speak to someone else, they'll be like, ugh, that person's so competitive and it's kind of toxic. Um, what's the difference between like a healthy competitiveness that like lifts you and other people up versus toxic competitiveness?
It's a great question. And it is subtle too. It is subtle because I had teammates that were so good, and you could tell that their competitive edge lifted us all. And then you'd have a teammate where you're like, oh my God, you're not seeing the forest through the trees. You know what I mean? Like, no one's going to win an Olympic gold medal in warm up. Like, stop it. Like, we're here. We're here. It's true though, you love your teammates, but then you have to go to the line and compete against them for a spot to represent your country. Like it's such a privileged life, but it can be stressful, being an athlete, especially in a sport like speed skating where one and done, and you can win or lose by 1/1000th of a second. Um, I always felt like the people that were the best type of competitive were the ones that knew when to say, hey, we're taking a step back, and they can be vulnerable. I think it also has like sometimes a maturity of, you know, are they focusing on the things that are in their control? Because if they're not, like that's truly not helping them. It's not helping me. It's not helping this person over there. Um, so I think the older I got, the more those people, unfortunately, kind of, well, not unfortunately, but we're almost weeded out because it inherently is a tendency or a character trait that is not conducive to performance. Sometimes when you're trying to be way too competitive, and you're just focusing on all the things that are outside of your control, it's very hard for that person to make it to a certain level, at least in sport. I mean, I'm sure there's outliers there. um I always just tried to treat people the way I wanted to be treated, like I was the rookie that was being chased before Vancouver from some veterans, and in the latter years of my career, I was the veteran being chased by rookies, and I just always wanted to, win or lose, give someone a big hug, and really remind myself that the only person I am competing against it is myself. But it's easier said than done. I mean, everyone wants to win the race.
I'm like hyper competitive.
Mm,
Um, but I've tried. I don't know. Tried is maybe I've learned through like both good things and then like bad experiences like were also like of my own creation
yeah.
of really just being like I've embraced being competitive. I used to deny it a lot. I'm like, oh, I'm not competitive. I'm not like that because I viewed it for whatever reason. I had this like really negative view of it. I
Mm,
grew up like as skateboarding and stuff like that, and so it was very like individual, just do it yourself. I wasn't very good at skateboarding, so it wasn't like I could compete with people on it. But as I got older and there were certain things I could excel at. I realized I started to come to terms with I was very competitive, and most of it was healthy until it wasn't healthy. But I didn't know how to
mhm.
get a hold of the unhealthy side of it because that unhealthy side of it was about like trying to rewrite my personal history or fill up like a hole inside of myself that was like could never be filled, all those types of things. And I don't know if I could have gotten a hold of it quicker or not, but I would say like life got me there eventually where I can be hyper competitive, but in mostly a healthy way.
Can you play Monopoly?
Oh yeah, I could play Monopoly, but if we get to like if we're playing it over multiple games or multiple days, it's gonna bring out a streak in me.
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny though because I resonate with so much of what you've just said, like that healthy competition with yourself, with others. But now that I'm like out of speed skating, I don't care at all. Like about like I can't get competitive because I'm like, what are you talking about? Like I'm happy. I'm more than enough. Like I'm going to work tomorrow. Like I'm not going to be the one that's freaking out about spike ball or something over a beer. I can't get there, and nor can my wife. And she was a professional soccer player, of course. Um, but that's like such a fascinating conversation. Yeah, the healthy competitive edge versus not, because I too have had experiences where you go, why did I choke so bad, or how did I find myself in this burnout? And it's yeah, it's trying to fill a void that cannot be filled with something external. 100%. I had to learn that lesson over and over and over again, especially when I was in the closet. I really thought that speed skating could give me something that would fill that void or that loneliness, and it just wasn't the case.
Yeah. And I'd love to start touching a base or touch on that in a second. I want to share with you a kind of a funny coming to terms with being the person that sucks the most at something story.
Okay.
So like I'm totally comfortable at sucking at stuff. It's like
Me
it's no big deal.
math.
But I could say that I've really gotten there. We went we took our we went out to Tofino last summer. We go every summer, but this is the first time we went surfing as a family. And our 6-year-old was just like boom, she's hopping up on the
Yeah.
surfboard, crushing it, just doing it over and over, like like really good, like unbelievable. Our oldest daughter, she gets up and does like about like 9 or 10 really good rides, and I'm just eating it like over and over. And for me, it's not about doing better than them. I just didn't want to be the only person who totally blew it and didn't hit anything. And finally, I got up and did like 2 runs in after like 2 days.
Good for you, though. I like Tofino. First and foremost, the water is so cold. It's so beautiful, but like you can't be a wimp surfing Tofino. So I'm
No,
giving you all the love. I'm giving you all the
thank
love.
you, thank you, thank you. I couldn't believe it though. Our 6-year-old was like crushing it, crushing it. She's like,
Kids,
"Oh,
eh?
surfing's easy." How
Yeah.
dare you? How
I
dare you be
know, I
so
know.
good?
Children, like it's like they just no fear or something. Yeah, it's amazing.
All right, so let's go to your story of like coming out, and also like how you've used your platform in that regard, because it really like super inspiring, super interesting time that you were in as you did that. So whatever you're comfortable sharing with that.
Of course. Yeah, and it's so funny because I need to name drop your mom again, like Mrs. Arslanian, your mother, Ursula, my teacher in junior high. Um, she was such a faith-based woman, and like just I don't know, it was never even like religion with a capital R. Just how she treated people and how she maneuvered the world was such a um yeah, just an inspiration. Like I really felt like she was well, she is, excuse me, a lovely human being that really again cemented, treating people the way you want to be treated and all these things. And growing up in a Catholic household, very Roman Catholic school to grade 12, it was tough. Like it was really, 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 really tough to even get to a place where I could kind of have that conversation with myself. Um, because I had just gone head first into speed skating. And I knew that something was lacking and we had touched on that kind of void, but I kept going, nope, like if I qualify for the Olympic Games and I can say that this is my goal and a check mark and I'm an Olympian, all of that'll go away. Like I was still naive enough to think, Olympians don't have problems. Like what problem does Katrina LeMaydon have? Like she's a human being with a like I was just so naive, that I had tunnel vision into that goal of going to Vancouver 2010. And I would say I qualified for that Olympics on December 27th, 2009 at about 3:10 p.m. in the afternoon in the Calgary Olympic Oval. And it was a dream come true, truly. I mean, I got to do that in front of family and friends, and to compete in a home Olympic Games is one of the most special. I can't even find the words. Like truly, it sounds cliched, but to wear the maple leaf at home at the Olympics was unbelievable. But I quickly realized that that wasn't actually going to cure any of this void inside of me, and that external rewards or results were not going to change any of like the toxic lack of self love I had, because I didn't know how to reconcile, the faith that I was brought up in, a conservative city where, when we were there, to my understanding, there wasn't much queer culture. Um, and I just had no representation. Like at that point, it was like Rosie O'Donnell, like, okay, she lives in New York and is a comedian. What does this have to do with my life? Like I felt like an alien, and I really, really struggled to
Mhm.
reconcile what I was taught, what life should look like or what my life should look like and what it was going to be. Um, and so it was a struggle. And it absolutely eroded my mental health. It eroded my love for my sport because I thought to myself, oh my God, I have this secret. And no one knows. And I felt that was very dishonest, kind of omitting this truth about myself. And I thought to myself, oh my God, if people only see me as a speed skater, as what I do, then that must be the only reason why that's my greatest value. That's the only reason people care. And so I attached all my self-esteem to my results. And of course, that is a one-way ticket to not being very fun, having any fun, to burning out, because it felt like life or death every time I got to the starting line. Um, and I lived that way for a good 4.5 years, really, until Sochi came around. And I just, knew that um, I knew the struggles that I had with with the amount of privilege I was brought up with. I was always surrounded by the best friends, great family, two loving, supporting parents. Um, played sports, liked school. Like I'm a really lucky person, and I just thought to myself, if this is how I'm feeling growing up in Canada, I can't even imagine being a Russian youth and having a government say, linking you to pedophilia and all of these horrific things. So it was a no-brainer, to be honest, because I could not live with myself truly, Aram, if I knew that I could have said something and I didn't. Like it was too big of an opportunity for me to hopefully help someone else. Because I didn't have any help when I was trying to maneuver it, and it wasn't from anyone's fault, or there's not one area that let me down. It just was not a conversation in sport 10 years ago.
Right.
It
Right.
wasn't a conversation. Like it's wild to think how quickly it has changed. There's still progress to be made, of course, but yeah, I felt like an alien, and I was like, I cannot let anyone feel the way I'm feeling. Like I at least need to say my name and my face, and if someone needs to hear it, then I got to believe that they'll hear it. But I just didn't want anyone to feel the weight of the world and the loneliness that I felt in some of my formative years.
Could we take a step back for a second, and then
Yes.
go into the actual conversation? You said something that I found like super fascinating, really illuminating, is because you weren't able to be honest with it with people yet, to like let people into this part of your life, that you viewed so much of really your only worth was your results as skating, and how every time you went up to skate it was life and death.
Hmm.
Can you tell
Yeah.
more about that? Like when people are just so hyper focused on this one thing and don't have other connectivity in their life, how that can create that kind of life or death response, a psychological response.
Well, you had said a few minutes ago, the difference between healthy competitive energy and negative, right? And I think that was exactly it. Like I would literally go to the line thinking, "Oh my God, if I don't skate well, I know I'm going to struggle to get out of bed for the next 48 hours." Like I remember skating in Japan at a World Cup once, and I crossed the line and I truly hated myself. Like on TV, I'm sure you could it was probably bleeped out, but I swore at myself in front of everyone because I knew it wasn't going to be good, and it it was such a downward spiral, unfortunately, because I was just not grounded. I didn't love myself, and it's so hard. I really think that your relationship with yourself dictates every other relationship you have and your outlook in the world. And I was just in such a bleak place. And the yeah, the negative psychological spiral. I mean, they've done so many psychological, tests, and academia has measured the success correlation to psychological safety, and I had no
Mm-hmm.
psychological safety. And so yes, there were moments when I could have a good race and I'd be walking 2 feet off the sidewalk and I'd think I was the queen, which was also not healthy. Like what? Because I skated around in a circle fast that one day, that means I'm like a good person or I'm more important than anyone else? Like absolutely not. But when you're so in the weeds, right? Like these are the lies that we tell ourselves. And it's something that I regularly bring up with my therapist, to be honest, even though I've been retired for a few years. Like it sticks with you, the good and the bad. And it's been a all you can eat buffet for me with speed skating, but certainly some of those negative aspects, yeah, it takes a long time to learn to forgive yourself.
One step, one